anything back over the wall, we're going to roll the dice.
Well, we're looking for some action then in the pits, perhaps in the next 4 laps from both Mario Andretti and from Brian Herta. You got a glimpse of a car off to the side there for a moment. That was the 25 car of Marco Greco that just rolled. Oh, there it is, rolled to the side of the track. And Marco climbed out of the car. We'll try and find out what the problem was for you.
Which only means it has a local yellow. And incidentally, there's Brian Herta again going for what we know to be now a one-stop race with A.J. Foyt making the decision. But a lot of races over the years have been won this way. The other guys that have to make 2 stops, if they don't have a lot of luck or a lot of distance on them, can really get bit by something like this when you have 2 different game plans.
So it's Brian Herta. A.J. Foyt may have just signaled one more lap for Brian. And Mario Andretti that are the 2 question marks. In fact, there is A.J. Foyt's crew beginning to lay out tires and get the fuel hoses in position in anticipation of a stop at the conclusion of this lap for that car, the 14 car of Brian Herta.
We knew that sooner or later Brian Herta would do well this year, but the idea that this team has gelled so quickly to put him in a position to maybe be on the podium is incredible. I know this gamble has to pay off. It's a long shot to be sure, but we are watching Brian Herta in the forefront of this race, and it's very exciting.
And when you talk a guy who has race savvy, none other than A.J. Foyt. He can figure out tactics so fast. He did it for so many years in the cockpit. Now he almost has leisure time in the pits trying to do it.
You know, he's in 3rd place and absolutely running good. There's A.J. Foyt right there. And, you know, if it's really something that you take a new team, put it together, no experience for Brian Herta, and have him in 3rd already.
A.J. Foyt talking to his driver while we wait for that potential stop. Let's go to Gary Gerald.
And a quick update on Marco Greco. You said he stopped and was out of the car. We're getting a report from the crew of gearbox problems. We also are experiencing scattered drops of moisture out of one of these dark clouds passing overhead. And a 3rd note, Paul, we expect Mario perhaps within the next 3 laps.
Well, Mario Andretti and Brian Herta have now completed their 36th lap without yet refueling. Al Unser Jr. has completed 36 as the leader of the race, but it's been only 15 laps since he was in the pit. So here is a wonderful piece of strategy being played on Belle Isle in Detroit.
Brian Herta, of course, majoring in economics at Ohio State, but he grasps the reality of what's happening here, and I'm sure he's short shifting that car a little bit, making sure that he does get to the pits, not using any more fuel than he absolutely has to.
They're 36 laps. They need 40. If they get around 40, 39 or 40, what's a one-stop race for them?
77 laps, the total distance here. Scheduled as A.J. Foyt somewhat nervously looks on. Remember, this is a strategy that he's played here before on Belle Isle. A.J.'s car was 2nd with Robbie Gordon at the wheel on the last lap in 1993. That time, though, Robbie spun out. Look at A.J. as he talks to his driver, and Robbie Gordon is in the pits, Jack.
Brian Herta, 12 months ago at this very same racetrack, captured an Indy Lights race. He is now at the wheel with the legendary A.J. Foyt's number 14. Takes some liquid. They are going to make a wing adjustment. They've gone down, believe it or not, Bobby Unser, 2 turns on the upper right-hand wing. 14.5 seconds there away. They say they're going to still try and make it a one-stop race.
So he comes in on lap 37. Boy, I got to be careful around A.J. for that mistake, don't I?
Well, you know, at lap 37 is going to put him a little bit close. They're counting on and hoping they get about at least 1 yellow to make it their guaranteed one-stop race.
Further update, Jack.
Well, Bobby, they had wanted to try and make it to lap 40, as you surmised, but actually Brian Herta had a problem the last lap out. He brushed the wall. It kind of panicked him a little bit, and A.J. said, okay, bring it in.
Jack, you mentioned his success here in Indy Lights last year when he won the race. Of course, he went on to win the Indy Lights championship. So this is a very savvy driver, and also a driver that is an example of how that Indy Lights feeder system works to bring great young drivers into IndyCar competition.
All right, so Brian Herta comes back out in the action, but he falls to 14th during the stop. That makes the next observation this fellow here, Mario Andretti, who on lap 38 heads into the pits. Gary Gerald's right there.
They tried to nurse it as far as they possibly could. He is the last man to come in for pit service today. They didn't get the lap 40. Mario on his Arrivederci Mario Tour. They've named turn 1 here on Belle Isle in his honor. Everything looking routine. Flipping the throttle, off the jack, and rolling 14.3 seconds.
So the question, Bobby Unser, let's just try this. There were 3 laps, nearly 6 miles before the green flag. Then Mario Andretti and Brian Herta carry it to at least the 38th lap of a race in which there are 77 laps scheduled. Why can neither one of those drivers make it to the end? I would think that they could.
Well, they can, but they're going to have to keep short shifting. Now, if they were to, for example, get a yellow right now, Paul, they could go ahead and run the cars hard the rest of the time. But right now, in order to know that he's not going to pick up air or lose the fuel pressure, he's going to have to short shift, run a slower speed. This is going to hurt him, and it's questionable. Is it worth it, or is it better to go really hard the whole race and make 2 stops? Obviously, it's different people's different game plans.
Well, of course, the fuel mixture can be adjusted as well, and obviously you would run it at a setting which gave you as much mileage as possible. But when you do that, you lose power.
It all costs speed that way, Sam.
Of course, with those 2 stops, the top of the order changes. Al Unser Jr. is still leading, followed by Paul Tracy. Emerson Fittipaldi up to 3rd, then Nigel Mansell, Jacques Villeneuve, and Robbie Gordon. We'll be back. Motive Detroit Grand Prix, looking down on the course from one of America's most enduring images, the Goodyear blimp. It's overhead, giving us an aerial view of the course here on Belle Isle. And on that course, it is Al Unser Jr. that runs in the lead, followed by his 2 teammates, Paul Tracy and Emerson Fittipaldi. Nigel Mansell sits in 4th place, and here is Michael Andretti. At the start of the show, we discussed his needs to get up to the front of the field. Well, he's come up some as he rides in 10th, having started in 17th position. And just ahead of him is Bobby Rahal and Mauricio Gugelmin.
You know, this camera shot, I think, is so unique. It's mounted on the edge of his wing, on the end of it. And if you look there where it says Cracker Jack right there, that's the air scoop. You watch the tire going up and down. Watch how close the car, or excuse me, how the car is so steady. Look at the tire go up and down. The car literally doesn't move. Now, this is a good shot.
That's the air scoop for the rear brakes on the right side.
Air scoop for the rear brakes. It has some in the front brakes that do the same. We just don't see them quite as well.
And we had this same shot last week at Milwaukee, but that scoop was missing. You don't need the brakes cooled as well on ovals as you do on road courses. So that's something new on the car.
And a drop of moisture on the lens. They mentioned earlier that there was an occasional sprinkle in the pits. And that could indicate that one of those clouds is passing over again, and that too could have a massive impact on this race.
It certainly could, but you can see, look at that beautiful sky up there with the clouds. There's not too many really bad thunderheads, just little ones that are going over occasionally. I think it's going to be limited to that, Paul.
Only takes 1. Look here, as he goes through the corners, watch the roll of the chassis, which you can see. If you lay the chassis as he rolls out, he makes that right-hander, the chassis rolls out to the left.
And there's very little actual roll in these chassis. They set basically flat, but you can see better from our camera position with the cars than you can by watching the cars run on the racetrack.
Well, exactly, Bobby. Compared to a passenger car, there's only a fraction of the roll. I mean, as you look for it there and you try to see the body leading, you really can't. The reason for that is they're trying to keep the underside of the road car as parallel to the road as possible so that the venturis of the ground effect system work as well as they possibly can.
If you watch the cars going right there now, Sam, you don't see the tire moving up and down as compared to the chassis. But as soon as we put the camera on it, shows you how nice the camera will show us.
Bobby Rahal with Gugelmin just ahead of him. You can see that for the time being, Rahal is not in that close a contact.
Let me just say, I think Rahal is one of the finest drivers in the business right now. Look at this perfectly executed pass by little Al diving down inside Buddy Lazier.
So Al Unser Jr. still at the top of the field. Paul Tracy chases, followed by Fittipaldi. Nigel Mansell is 4th. Jacques Villeneuve, young man with 1 terrific season under his belt as a rookie in the IndyCars, currently sits in 5th place. That is a team, the Forsyth Green operation, with this new driver. They had him, of course, as a driver in the Atlantics last year. They've really come together so well, and they've been so strong all year. Let's go to Gary Gerald.
Paul, we were just checking with Barry Green, who is the co-owner of this team and, of course, such a great fixture in IndyCar racing for so many years. And he's been so full of pride over the performance of the team and the young driver. We asked him how the car had been responding since that first stop. He says, we're hanging on with a big grin. They know that Robbie Gordon is lurking close by, but they were very proud of their pit stop that gained them a couple of positions into the top 5.
There gives you the interval back to Villeneuve. Just behind him, of course, is Robbie Gordon. Nice little fight here right now.
These
Well,
are
and
two
you-
hot young Chargers, and it's good to see them racing together. Could provide some action.
And you can certainly see the different lines.
Oh, and Mario's off course and into the tire barriers. His last race at Detroit, but remember, they got Mike Groff out of the barriers and got him going. You can't tell how much damage might exist to the front of the car, but the fact that he's in so deeply, especially with the left side, there may be some damage there.
It's so easy sometimes. It's going to damage the wings for sure, and sometimes maybe the suspension, like it did on Mike Groff, but maybe it didn't hurt very much. You know, it's so easy to get into the tires here on a course like this. I'm sure we can see his front wings have been hurt quite a bit there because you can see the tires wrapped around it there really good. So it's not good news for Mario.
Another issue is the car stalled, and how tough will it be to get it going again? Because if the damage is superficial, he could make it back to the pits and get a new nose cone. Trouble is, look at the time that's being lost.
And look at the skid marks. He just came straight off the corner on the exit, Bobby.
Yes, he did, but that's also could have been from oil that somebody dropped on the road, or there could have been another car that he was lapping that was having a bit of a problem. That's very often what happens at a track like this.
Well, remember last year, Bobby, they really had just a single groove to run in by this part of the race because the tires had worn so much. The rest of the track was what we call marbles. And this year it's better. The tire compound is different for this race than it was last year. It's a little bit harder. But even so, by this point in the race, if you get off the line very much, you can get in trouble.
Well, Mario sat there so long that he's just pretty much out of the race right now. Even if he gets back in, he's totally out of contention. He's hung up with the tires too hard.
Ford Electronics on board Robbie Gordon's car. Boy, they've done a nice job with this, too, giving us the gear as well. The report, of course, from the IndyCar safety team, we could pretty much tell Mario Andretti is not injured in that accident. You'll see him coming up on the left. Well, gone.
And just watch the speedometer where it says MPH over there. Watch how fast these cars accelerate. They'll go from almost nothing into way over 100 miles an hour and just almost nothing flat.
Look at this fight with Villeneuve. They continue to battle for 5th place.
Two young guys that really have a lot to prove.
Both in their mid-20s. Jacques Villeneuve having his rookie year. Robbie Gordon, of course, his 3rd year.
Mario is staying in with that car. That was our broadcast booth that just flashed by on the left there, right on the edge of the course. A terrific view. And they've got Mario started again.
And
We'll look at the car for damage.
Look at that car. It's still basically together. Now, how in the world could you have a wreck like that and not have any more problems? Look at the wings are still on it. The wings are still there. It's amazing what those tires will do to cushion a crash.
You know, for years, barriers with no protection.
That would have normally been hitting a cement wall or something like that would be a $100,000 wreck. Really easy.
What a simple solution, the used tires.
And they band them together. If you don't band them together with the steel straps, they don't work.
Let's go up forward now. Nigel Mansell as he chases Fittipaldi. Jack Arute, you have an addition?
Well, it just goes to show you the cooperation. At last year's drivers' meeting at this race, the drivers brought up a point about in the runoff areas, if they could add more rows of tires, they thought they could slow the cars down with less damage. That's what Wally Dallenbach, Kirk Russell, and the rest of them did. And there you see it. Saved $100,000 for Mario Andretti.
And so simply, too. Mansell now in pursuit of Fittipaldi. This is a fight for 3rd.
But earlier, Mansell, I noticed, was having trouble with his right front wheel locking up under braking. Now, if he's going to get by Emerson, it's probably going to be under braking, and yet he is not able really to brake that deep. It's going to be interesting to see if he's able to get by exactly what tactic he uses.
Sammy pushes on him really hard, just as he did earlier. And then he backs off a little bit, lets Emo have a little breather. What it is, still the same old deal. He's trying to worry him to death before he takes a real hard run at it.
So Mansell in pursuit. Al Unser Jr. leads Paul Tracy by 6 seconds, so no contest at the front of the field. We'll continue to watch Fittipaldi and Mansell. They have Mark Smith just ahead of them. This could be the other thing that Mansell waits for, which is a slower car, and use him for a billiard shot.
Yes, that's what I started to mention, Paul. You got it just before I did. Look at Mansell now. He's right on Fittipaldi's tail. This is when he's got to do it, because if he can lock Emo into a certain place behind Mark Smith, he gets by him really easy.
Yeah, Mark Smith didn't want any part of that.
Well, we're talking about sportsmanship here, though. He saw who was behind him. Mark Smith just intentionally pulled right over. It wasn't a let-by. He just deliberately made sure the track was clear for these two men.
Look ahead to Fittipaldi's car. From time to time on a gear change, you can see a flash of flame from the exhaust. The exhaust is just behind the half shafts extending out to the two rear wheels.
That's caused by when you shift, the fuel keeps getting in the turbocharger. The turbocharger running like 1,800.
Oh, and Fernandez into the wall. He moves around. Apparently he's okay, though the right rear of the car looks like it suffered some heavy damage.
This time, the cash register is ringing. He has hurt the car.